One.
Enemy comes in to rob, steal, kill, and destroy. But I come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. Welcome to the Antidote.
Hey, welcome to another edition of the Antidote Show. I'm your host, Michelle Brown. Now, y'all know I be having technical difficulties, y'all, but we are going to get the job done. I am outside today. Today is 80 degrees in Atlanta. You got to be kidding me. It feels so good out here. So I said, let me take it, outside. But, you in my living room, though, but we outside on the patio. Yeah, I love y'all so much. Thanks for tuning in to the Antidote Show. Hey, listen, thinking about outside, we have so much going on in our communities. And every time you turn on the TV or you turn on the news or just be out, there's always something about gun violence. I know that's a big problem here. It affects me personally, with what the things that I had to go through with some of my loved ones and defending themselves and things like that. Gun violence, I get it when it comes to self-defense, but just to go out here killing folks and all that, that's something totally different. So today I have a guest. This is a young lady. She has suffered a great loss to gun violence, and I'm gonna let her come on and tell you herself how gun violence has really turned her whole life around. And the only way we're going to overcome is by the blood of the Lamb and our testimony. So we have to give our testimony for those who have lost people to gun violence for any reason. A loss is a loss, who's to blame, because there's always sides to a story, right? But however, it's getting to the point where we're losing so many people. So my sister, she's going to come forth in her own way, and she's going to give her testimony on how she's gone through hurt from gun violence. So without further ado, welcome to the stage, Miss Amy Barnes. Hey, Amy.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm doing great today. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, you look good. You look good out here on my patio. Okay.
Thank you.
Girl, we moving on up. Hey, you know what I'm saying?
Thank you for allowing me to come on and talk with you.
You are so worth it. So, Amy, I know that you've gone through, we've been sitting on other panels before, and I just wanted to get a more in-depth view of your total testimony, because I only got to hear part of it. And I know that you have gone through a great loss, and I'm gonna allow you to let my audience know. But, tell me what your loss was to gun violence. Tell me, what led up to it. When did it just give me your story. Give me your story.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So, my son, Christopher Jamal Barber, he was 28 years old, and my only son and my firstborn. And so this happened in 2018. And so I'll go back to the summer of 2018, back in June. So my dad had back surgery. And from that back surgery, he contracted sepsis in his bloodstream. And so he was placed in the hospital. He spent 30 days in the hospital. So the entire month of July, he was there in the hospital. And me being the oldest child, and my sister and my brother, they had to work. And I've been on disability, Michelle, since I believe 24 years old. I've had two back surgeries. And so I had those at 24 within 6 months of each other. And so I've been on disability since that time. and to so and my dad, he didn't have a wife, and so I would, be there at the hospital with my dad. My mom, she had had a knee replacement, and so I would have to go from DeKalb County to Henry County to trying to, take care of both of them, try to get her to, therapy in DeKalb County, go back to the hospital in Henry County and, be with him, every day. So I stayed there in the hospital, with my dad so that my sister and brother could go to work. And my dad, he didn't understand a lot of what was going on. And so I would be there to talk, with the doctors and just to know what was going on. So I spent, nearly 30 days, and nights there in the hospital with my dad. And so my dad, he passed away on July 28th, and we buried him on August the 3rd. Well, maybe about 2 weeks after, my youngest daughter, she came to me one morning before she got ready to go to work at Six Flags on a Saturday morning. And she was telling me that one of her best friends who had lived with us for, over a year, she said, Mom, her mom, had passed away. And I was like, no way. And she was like, Mom, yes, she did. So she called her and they talked, and she put me on the phone with the young lady. And Michelle, when this young lady was in my home, I had, always told her, I have your back. I have your back. Come hell or high water, I don't care where you are, you can always call on me. And I would, have her there in my house, I would let her sit in my lap, cry, lay in my bed, hold her, just whatever. And so her mom, and her youngest sister, they were going to New York this particular day. And she ended up having a brain aneurysm. And she had to get off the Greyhound.
Who was that, the mother?
Yes, the mother.
The mother had the, oh, you telling me how the mother
Yes,
passed
ma'am.
away was through
Yes,
a brain
ma'am.
aneurysm.
Yes, ma'am. So the mother, she had a brain aneurysm. She ended up passing away. And that left this young lady and her two sisters with no one to care for them. And so when she reached out to, to my daughter was like, Mom, what are we gonna do? She had been living, with us. Oh, you're gonna let her come back, what you gonna do? And so
Where was the two little sisters?
so they were living in Clayton County, because they used to live in the same neighborhood I lived in Lithonia. So that's how I met them. The middle daughter, who was my daughter's friend, they all, they went to school together. So, maybe 3 or 4 girls in the neighborhood, they were all best friends. They always hung out at my house. And so, like I said, she had lived with us for over a year. Her mom had lost her house, and she asked me if her daughter could, stay with us so that, she could continue going to school in the area, because they were moving to a different county. And
Gotcha.
so when she, had this brain aneurysm, it burst, her trying to go to New York on the Greyhound, and they had to rush her to the hospital in New Jersey. So I talked with, the daughter, and I was like, okay, let me speak, with your dad, with your aunt, because they lived in New York, but their relationship was, estranged. So I agreed to, let them come and they could, be at my house. They had an older brother, but he was stationed in Japan in I believe, the Navy. So I was like, okay, I prayed about it, and I had told this young lady, I have your back. Never thought
Okay.
I'd, challenge, in that way. That
So what happened?
So I let her come and, stay with us. But the day that they were coming to Atlanta, I had got a call from the school to come and pick up my daughter because she was sick. So I get to the school, they're telling me, Miss Barnes, Miss Delaney, because that's my daughter's last name, Miss Delaney, the nurse wants to see you. So just wait a minute. So the nurse comes walking up with my daughter, and she was like, Miss Delaney, how you doing today? And I was like, because I'm tired, because I just buried my dad, a few weeks ago. So,
Right.
how you doing today? And she says, when it rains, it really pours, doesn't it? And Michelle, I threw my hands up. I was like, God, you're not
What
about to do this.
happened?
She said, I understand, but God says He has a role for you to play, and He needs for you to play your role. And so that was the beginning of this path that I'm on now. And so push forward. A few months later, maybe like September, I had a dream about my son. And in this dream, I saw my son laying on a hospital bed, and he had this crisp white sheet pulled up to his neck. I told him about it. He was like, yeah, mama, something probably is going to happen to me, but I'm going to be okay. I thought maybe my son was going to get sick, something like that. But
No, you supposed to listen. When you see dreams like that, you're supposed to rebuke them in the spirit.
yes,
Because
ma'am.
listen, warning comes before destruction, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Because like even with my son, I saw things before it happened, and I was like, you see what I'm saying? I didn't
Yes,
even
ma'am.
know to rebuke that neither for it not to come to pass. But go ahead. I just go
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am. And
This is
so we talked about it, we discussed it. But like I said, I never thought that my son would be dead. I thought he was going to be sick. And so the day before my son was killed, I was in church. And when I tell you God dealt with me so that particular day, that was this young guy. He came, he was ministering to me, just, prophesying to me, speaking things, into my life. And God dealt with me. So I was on that floor crying, and people close to me, they were like, she got a demon in her. And who would have known the very next day, two young men would show up at my house and shoot my son and kill my son. And so
they came to your house and did that?
they came to my house. So that next day, my son, he had spent most of the day out in the garage because that's where he hung out at. And so push forward that night, maybe about 10 almost 10:30. I had finished talking to my daughter on the phone, her and my niece, and I went upstairs and I sat down in my room. And then I heard my son scream, "Ma, I've been shot." And he had come in the house. I had left the trash can in the middle of the floor because we had taken out trash that day. It was trash day. And so I heard him stumble over the trash can, and he came in the house to let me know that he had been shot, and he went out the front door, and he was trying to chase after these young men. So after all of this had transpired, we were back in the house because the police came, and the children were telling me, "Ma, you have cameras, so go in your room and look at the camera to see what happened." And so we looked at the camera. What happened was these two young men, they came into our neighborhood. The one that was driving, he put the other young man out up the hill. And so my son doesn't know this because it was dark on the street. So my son was in the garage, and this young man, he pulls up in this SUV outside the street, and he gets out, and we could see the garage door goes up. So that suggests to me that my son was expecting whoever came to the house. So they had to have reached out to him on the phone. We found out later that they had reached him by WhatsApp. And so he goes out to the street, him and this young man, they dapping each other up. They walk back into the garage. So they stay in the garage for a few moments. My son walked the young man, back out to the street. And when the guy, went over to the driver's side to get in the car, my son walked back towards the garage, but he didn't let the garage door down because he's waiting for this young man to leave. Well, when my son walked back, this other young man is walking down the street in the dark, but my son can't see him. And so on the camera, we can see the guy that my son did have the interaction with. We can see him pass this young man a gun. So the young man that was walking down the street, he kept walking. He got the gun. He kept walking past the vehicle. And then once he got in front of the next door neighbor's house, he, ran over into their yard, on the side of my house, and he just, stood there. And the young man that my son had been talking to, he walked back towards the garage as if he had forgotten to tell my son something or forgot to get something. Like that. And so
and ambushed him.
And they ambushed him. And they shot him in his side. And so when my son, yelled for me, I, ran downstairs, ran out the door. I was, screaming for him. And like I said, it was dark, on our street, but I could see him. He was trying to run down the street, but then I think he realized that he was hurt, real bad. And so he turned around, tried to come back to where I was, and he fell down in the street. And so I went to him, trying to get him up out the street. I was able to get him up and get him over into the neighbor's yard next door, and had him to lay down. And I called 911. And so they were asking, do you know who they were? Do you know who they were? He was saying he didn't know, their names or whatever. And so the young lady, the oldest young lady that I allowed to come and stay with me, remember the 3 daughters. So she came up in a car, and she, the car, they put her out exactly where I was, which was kind of strange to me. But at that moment, I can't even focus on that. And so later, after, the police come, the ambulance come, they, got my son, took my son to the hospital. But of course, I can't go because I'm a witness, so I have to remain at home.
Right.
And so, we go through all of that. When I finally get to the hospital, exactly how I saw my son in the dream is what I saw when I got to the hospital.
Wow. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, and I mean to interrupt you, but let's back up for a second. What did the prophet say to you?
So he was telling me that I hadn't made a mistake. The choices, that I had recently made, I hadn't made a mistake. It was ordained by God, that people will not understand it. They will not understand why God has had me to do the things that I've been doing and the things that I will do. But it is ordained by God, and don't worry about it. Keep going.
Okay.
So
I know that's right. Okay, you can go back to the day. I got you.
And so
I just had to see what the prophet said.
Yes,
see if it lined up,
Yes, ma'am. So that's what he told me. And so remind you, I've been on disability since 25 years old.
Right.
So
right.
I was not financially in a position stable to even take care of three other kids, because I had 4 of my own and my grandson. So, but
you still taking care of your parents too?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't doing that. No, ma'am. I just had myself, my 4 children, and my grandson. And now I've allowed these 3 children to come and be in my home. And so when all of this happened, I asked the oldest girl, I asked her, because I was asking her about what happened to my son, because my son had testified against this young man that was in a gang. My son had testified against this young man, him and another guy. They had shot some people. They were in a car with my son and another guy, and they shot some people. And Michelle, I always, told my children, do the right thing. When you see something, you say something, and consider yourself. If it was you, what would you want something to do? And so this young man that my son testified against, they went to court, and my son kept saying, "Mama, they ain't gonna find him guilty because his dad is, a police officer in DeKalb County. They're not gonna find him guilty." He told the investigators they're not gonna find him guilty. And so I was like, "You still do the right thing." And
enough, but that put like a target on his back, didn't it?
And that's
what gang? Yeah, what gang was your son in?
My son was not in a gang.
Oh, okay.
No,
He was. Who was in the gang?
So my son was a people person, just all over the neighborhood, never met a stranger. And so he just talked to everybody. And so these my son was much older, well, not much older, but maybe 5, 6 years older,
Mm-hmm.
than these young boys. And they were in their late teens. And so they were just up one night with nothing to do. And they thought, hey, well, let's go out and do this. But they needed transportation. So they called my son, and my son didn't have a license, didn't have a car, but they was like, hey, are you with somebody that can come and pick us up? We're gonna go out, do whatever, and then we'll give y'all something. And so they was like, okay, young people thinking you're fast money. So my son was going to wherever, he could go and get some weed from, to be honest. And
Right.
that's where they were. And he went upstairs to go and buy some weed from somebody. And the 3 other guys was in the car. So the 2 younger dudes that were in, gang, they were in the back seat and hanging out the window and hollering. So they saw this man and this lady, that were together, and they started talking to the lady, just being disrespectful. And the guy and the 2 young boys, they, got into an argument. And so my son, he came downstairs, he heard the commotion, and got on in the car and was like, man, what y'all doing? I come over here and these people gonna think I got something to do with this foolishness or whatever. And so they went ahead and pulled off. And then these 2 young guys, they are hanging out the window and shooting at these people. And they hit them. And so the people,
And so your son was in the car with them when they did that. So he was accessory. Right. So he would have been accessory to that crime if he not turned over evidence saying that
Right.
he had nothing to do with that. Basically, I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time kind of thing, right? Because they probably were going to charge him with murder as well.
Well,
Right.
they didn't kill anybody.
Okay.
But it was an aggravated assault charge. And so in the area in Lithonia, it's a whole lot of apartments, in this subdivision.
Right.
So it's one way in and one way out. So police are coming in. The young man that is driving is going out, and people gave the tag of the car. So when they did track down the young man was like, I don't even know, these guys. I was with my friend. My friend received a phone call, and so we just went and picked him up. And so when my son when he came home, he told my daughters about it. And so I went and told my daughters, I heard them talking, and I asked them about it. And so I talked to my son, and I was like, okay, when DeKalb County come to this house, your behind better sit down, talk to them. You better tell them what they need to know. And so when they came, they talked to him. They, asked him to come down to the precinct.
Interrogated him and all that.
Him, tell us what we need to know. We'll bring you back home. And they did what they told him they was going to do. And so the one young man, he took a plea deal. But the other young guy, they found him not guilty. Well, in my mind, Michelle, I'm thinking, okay, this ought to be just over with. You didn't get charged. This ought to be over with. But it wasn't. So it put a target on my son's back. So this young man would come through the neighborhood, shooting at our house, shooting through the garage, just bullets just coming through the house. After my son. I remember one time I was taking my mom to Atlantic Station to an appointment, and he saw early in the morning, and he saw me and my mom leaving the neighborhood, and he followed us from our house all the way out to 20. And then I got out there and I lost his behind, on 20. I had to get off.
So let me ask you this. Why didn't y'all go into protective custody? Because they should have known if he was dealing with gang members and he was dealing with all these people, and he should have known not to trust nobody. Right? Why they didn't put y'all in protective custody and move y'all
No,
from at least that house or that area?
no one ever mentioned protective custody. No one,
What?
no one ever mentioned it. They never mentioned it. And so we went through that. But this young man, he ended up in a very, very serious motorcycle accident in DeKalb County. And I think about maybe 4 or 5 cars, they hit him. And so then he died. And then the other young men, they took up the vendetta against my son because
What?
the young man that he testified, he's dead now from this motorcycle accident and being hit by several cars. So he's dead. But the other young men, they took up this vendetta against my son. And
And
so,
those were the ones that came after your son?
right. And
Those
so
were the
when
one.
Right. And so when I go back and I'm asking the young lady, the oldest young lady that I'm letting live in my home, I'm asking her, um, what do you know? She and this other young man, they would be at my house every day, every day. I would go to pick up my niece from school every day, take my daughter to work Monday through Thursday. She worked from 6 to 4 at Walmart in Fulton Industrial. So I would leave out of the house every day. I would see these two people sitting in my garage playing cards with my son. On the weekend, they would be in the garage playing cards with my son and my daughter. So now that this has happened to my son, where's the other young man? And I'm like, what's his name? Where does he live? And she don't know nothing. She don't know. She can't remember nothing. So I was like, okay. So I'm starting to piece stuff together. Is not making any sense. And I didn't know that she was a part of this gang too. She affiliated, with them. I didn't know that before I let her come and live in my house. And so we push forward. I'm starting to put, different pieces together. So I was like, you have to leave, you have to leave my home. I can't let you continue to stay here. You have to leave. And at that same time, I was going through the process with defects, during foster care, going to court, trying to keep the kids out of foster care. But the oldest one, you're gonna have to leave. And so I continued to do what I needed to do for them, trying to, funeralize my son. And then after, burying my son, still going, through the process of trying to take care of my family and trying to take care of these children. And we'll fast
So
forward
at
to,
you have 6 kids in your home.
yes,
You still
ma'am.
have the two. You have those 3 and your 3
I have
after
though
your
I have
son.
I have well, because I think maybe the day after I buried my son, I told her she was gonna have to leave. She had to leave. Um, she could no
Where
longer stay.
where was the
Stay
other
with
2
me.
girls?
The other two girls, they remained in my home. They
Oh,
remained in my
okay.
home. I was still committed to doing what I said I would do, and they didn't have a place to go. So it was either me or foster care. And the oldest one, well, the middle one, who's my daughter, one of my daughter's best friends, they were like in the I think 11th grade at the time. And then the
Mm-hmm.
youngest daughter, she was 10 years old. And so I was like, okay, I could see them, being separated, so I, did what I needed to do to try to, keep them out of the foster care system. But now, I'm going forward, and I was like, okay, God, I can't believe that I am taking care of another mother's child, a mother who had a brain aneurysm. She passed away, and she didn't have anybody to take care of her children. And I'm taking care of her children, and then you allow someone to come to my house and kill my child. And
Wow.
so how do I continue to get up and take care of these children knowing that I've had to bury my own.
Right. I
And
know that
so,
was very hard. How did you do that? Was it all God? Did you seek out counseling? What did you do? Because I don't see any you time in there with 6 children. How did that work?
at that time, I did go to counseling because I had started going to counseling after my dad passed, because there were some things, going on, in my family as a result of my dad passing. So I had already been going, because of that. But then life got so busy that I couldn't even continue to go to counseling. So after my son was murdered and I'm still trying to take care of these kids, all I have to rely on now is the Holy Spirit. All I have to rely on now is my foundational teaching, what I know about God. And I've had
Right.
um my former pastor, it was, different prophecies that he had given me, dreams that God had shown me. um those things begin to replay in my memory, and so those things help me to hold on. The scriptures help me to hold on. And so um my daughter, she was, going to high school, and she was, come home, and one day she came home, and one of the neighbors, were calling, and they had these young men, they were in the neighborhood and, following her. And even at the school, one of the young men had told her, they told me to watch you, and, just trying to find out what it is that we know. And of course, she was going around. She was what, 16 years old.
Wh- They
So
wait a
she,
minute. They told the little girl. They
my
for
youngest
some.
daughter, my
Oh
youngest
yeah,
daughter.
yeah. They told me
Mhm.
to watch you.
Yes, yes. She had a guy in her classroom that he was a part of their gang. And so he said, he told her, they told me to watch you. And so she came back and, she told me, and they had even, been following her in the neighborhood after she got off the bus one day. And so
Yeah, I was gonna say, why didn't y'all move from that neighborhood after that happened, or you
because
know,
I didn't
or
have
couldn't
any
do
other,
it?
I didn't have any other, place to go. At that moment, I like, where am I going with all of these kids?
Yeah, because these gangs it's crazy, man. But what it boils out to is demons. Just keep
Yes,
it,
ma'am.
may call a spade a spade. You
Yes,
know what I'm
ma'am.
saying? These demons, because they come to kill, steal, and destroy. That's their whole thing. That's what they want to do. And I honor God because you kept your mind stayed on Him. He kept you in perfect peace.
Yes,
It
ma'am.
didn't make sense. It didn't make sense how things were going or what things were going through, but it seems like you kept a prayer life. You kept seeking God to figure out really what's going on. And He was showing you, He showed you warning before destruction. He showed you because that's what He said He would do in His word. And He's not a God that He should lie.
That's
He's
true.
not a God that
That
He
is
should
that
lie.
is
So
that is true.
all this has led you to start your own campaign. Can you tell us a little bit about your campaign and what you stand for and how you allow your son's name to go on?
Yes, ma'am. So, after, all of that, after a while, God said, get up and go to a place that I show you. And, and that ended up being South Georgia. And so that's where I went to. And after, being here for maybe 4, 5, 6 months, he gave me Bridging the Gap Mothers Without Sons. And so, from, that, um, him giving me that, I that was in January of 2020. And so in February, Valentine's Days was coming up. And so I had, been making gift baskets, doing things for Valentine's Day. My son, he helped me, during Valentine's Day, putting my stuff out there, just selling it. And so I thought, okay, I'll give Gift of Love gifts back to mothers in honor of my son, but on behalf of theirs. And so it kind of started, right there, giving gift of love, back, to mothers, showing up for them, because their sons their sons cannot, or their daughters, cannot. And so I, show up. I never call a mother, myself. I never call a family myself. There's always someone that puts
An
me in
advocate.
touch. Yes, ma'am. There's always someone that opens the door for me to be able to go and sit down with the mother. Most of the mothers that I've come in contact with, that I've spoken with, that I've gifted gift of love gifts to, I have sat in their homes and, talked with them. The majority of them. I have a photo album that has all the young men, because all of them that I spoke with, they've been young men. And the youngest, I believe, are like 14 years old, which is, just really sad.
And
But
these are all young men of color.
these I have two that are Caucasian that are in my
Hmm.
book, but the others, they are young men of color. They are young men of
So
color.
how do we turn that around, like from 2 to say even 10, right? 2 to 20. How do we turn this around as a community to get these guns off the streets, to stop the hurt of the parent, you know? I thank you, Holy Spirit. He said he's the way. He's the antidote to that.
That's
God
it.
said he's the antidote to that. People have to come up to him and get a dose of him to understand that death, murder is an abomination. It's a sin. These demons that they're operating in, negative vibes, hostile people, unforgiving people, sick people, right?
That's it. That's it. That's it.
Well,
Because
tell them how to get in touch with you, because we like run into our end time. But tell them how to
okay,
get in touch with you, and what we'll do, we'll have a part two, right?
okay, that's
A
fine.
part two of where you going, what you're doing, what all that you're doing. But we know you got bridge the gap, and you're giving away the gifts of love, right, through your is this your nonprofit, or you just
Through my nonprofit. Through my
through your
nonprofit.
nonprofit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And so the contact information, that is it on the bottom of the screen, Michelle.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that's
Yes,
my
ma'am.
phone number, 229-603-6197. You can also send an email, that is motherswithout sons@gmail.com. And so Michelle, is not just about gift of love, gift baskets. There are several other things that God has placed in my heart to do, programs that I would like to implement, because there is a aftermath of things that mothers, families incur after the gun violence, after
Right.
burying their sons and their daughters. There's an aftermath, after that. There are lots of other things that happen, in your life after that. And so that is where I come in to help bridge the gap, to help provide those resources, because there is a before your life before gun violence happened, and then after gun violence happens, Michelle, you are somebody totally different. And so you
Right.
need somebody to
Okay.
help you navigate, somebody to help you
Gotcha.
navigate.
I gotcha. So what we're gonna do a part two of that. We're gonna do a part two, and we're gonna get with you and do that next 30 minutes of this show on a
Okay.
part two, and we're gonna talk about that. All right. So guys, thank you for tuning into the Antidote Show. Thank you, Miss Amy Barnes, for
Thank
coming
you.
on to the show. And we're going to talk about this thing. We're really going to talk about this because we want to know her triumph behind it. So I'm giving you a cliffhanger because she got more to come. But we're going to come back another day and do that, Amy, and have that part two.
Thank
Let's
you.
see how many people would love to hear more about this gun violence, because we got to get a hold of it. But at the end of the day, remember, God is the antidote. And get
God
it
is
out.
the antidote.
Yes. God bless you.
You sick? Are you tired? Are you feeling down? Well, Mershell Brown will give you a dose of The Antidote Show. Next week, you'll hear from some very special guests coming from across the globe. They'll share their life encounters with you that will change your life the same way it changed theirs. The program, The Antidote Show, will cure you and get rid of all of the negativity of the outside world. The Antidote Show. Get a dose of it.